Following announcement has been paid for by the Celtic World Order.
Hello, good evening. Welcome back once again to Celtic World Order. It's a pleasure as always to have anyone who's joining us live, or if you're listening or watching retrospectively, again, it's a warm welcome to you. We're here for our wee midweek show. It's CW Uncensored. We're just going to look through what's been happening in the world of Celtic, everything and anything, and we'll have a wee discussion about it. It's a first time ever. It's a dawning of a new era, as it's the first time that we've had all three contributors of Celtic World Podcast, like that, joining me. And it's an absolute pleasure. Up top with me, as always, he's the stalwart, he's the OG Paddy boy, Paddy Maguire. And below is our newest member, our youngest member. He's going to give us a kick up the backside, give us fresh insight and fresh ideas, as our Josh McCafferty. Lads, it's a pleasure. How you doing?
I'm all good, mate. Yeah, just busy wee week, so getting ready for the weekend.
Absolutely. Yourself, Josh, been keeping busy?
Aye, a wee bit finished uni for the summer yesterday, so that was quite satisfying, and then all roads leading to Dundee on Sunday.
That's it. You've got to take those small wins. But yes, we will get covering everything that's been going on. But before we do that, there is, as always, the wee bit of housekeeping right at the front end. So we say it once, we say it twice, and we'll say it until it changes. Right now, Celtic World Order's operation is small. We are very small. We're growing, but there's always room for some rapid expansion. So if you like what you see, you like what you hear, and you want to help us all out, you know what to do. Hit the subscription on YouTube. If you like it, give it a wee thumbs up. And if you want to extend the reach, go a wee bit crazy, then you can share our content. You can also contact us elsewhere on the socials at CWPod1888 on X, formerly Twitter, and as we always say, old school, we're still on Facebook, and that's at Celtic World Order Pod. So you can connect with us there, and you'll also find our personal handles within the description below. Well, that's it. As we say, it's almost been a bit of a strange tip of the week after those weekend cup results. There's not been too much to write home about. There's been a few stories, a few rumours, a few things that have come out, and we'll get to that. As I say, I've not had a chance really first to catch up yourself, Paddy. You had a wee delay. You were not around. It was myself and Josh seeing to business of what was a eventful weekend. Just to quickly touch on that then, not had your thoughts on it. How did you feel about, firstly, our performance, and then the result for the other team?
Our performance, again, I thought was the way we always are. A game of two halves. We are brilliant for 45 minutes. And then we seem to fall apart. I think Aberdeen caught us after the first. I don't know how long was it before Majowski scored. Do you know what I mean?
2 minutes.
2 minutes. I mean, 2 minutes in, bang! I'm sitting watching it in my new man cave. Me, I had absolutely fantastic. Sitting watching it, and I thought, oh, here we go. It's just going to be one of them. We've had a cracking week. We're talking about this is where we come good, and then bang. I just thought, right, reality check, Paddy. But you know what? We got back. We got into the lead. I thought, yep, here we go. And then, as we spoke about previously, that left-hand side, Scales, Taylor. Oh, what more can you say about it? Do you know what I mean? It's just, it's becoming bad when you expect it. Yeah. And you know what? We got lucky. I won't even comment about Joe Hart's penalty, but the guy...
I'm trying to forget it, mate. Listen, there's been enough drama. We're trying to move on.
He saved it. He done the job. I think Brendan said after the match, you need to get the players some counselling session, never mind training sessions after it. Mm. And I felt the same. I kind of come in after it, and the wife's like, "You're fucking sweating. What's going on?" It's just watching the games. I was sitting there like, come on, you know what I mean? But yeah, that's why we love it. That's what Celtic means, isn't it? You just get that buzz. You get that feeling. The other mob, yeah, they've done the job. Seen was it Cyril Dossers coming out and giving his wee part, giving it the, oh yeah, we're a unit, we're this, we're that. Nobody cares, mate. Do you know what I mean? You'll slip up again. It's all right. Don't worry about it. Look at Scotland.
That's a bit I like, mate. I like that.
Even at that, I watched the highlights of their win over Hearts, and I don't think they were that great. See the amount of times passing the ball out for the back and it was given away. A decent attacking side punishes that every day of the week, and Hearts have 1 or 2 goals. So, from a Celtic point of view, you can take a few positives for that.
100%.
I think we were all, if we're being totally honest, just take the old facts and stats and the history that they'd never beat Rangers at Hampden ever. We take that out, and even if we just looked at the sort of wee bit of disarray that appeared to be in the ranks at Rangers in the general form, I think if we're being completely truthful, nobody actually really expected any other result, did we?
Nah.
We end up with the showpiece results going on the 25th of May. It's a very notable day indeed. And we've also found out it's going to be a 3 o'clock kickoff, so we're not bending the knee to the English game. So that's always good to see as well. But it just adds a wee extra layer, doesn't it, to this already interesting season, because we find ourselves now getting into a game that, if we're being honest, that we anticipated to be in. For whatever reason, it suddenly gave them a shot in the arm, and now they're the greatest team in the world once again. But we go into that game potentially as ourselves looking for a League Cup double. And there's also that really, God forbid, that it could be trying to stop a Rangers treble. We like a wee bit of drama. Do we like that much drama?
No, absolutely not. I think it's you want to be involved, as the players will say and the manager will say, you want it to be the big games and things like that. But for me, at least from my point of view, I think Celtic, the priority's got to be the league between now and the end of the season. Obviously, the cup, you look at the cup, it's because it's against Rangers, I think there's an added bit now that wants you to win it. Whereas if the final was against someone like Hibs or Aberdeen, you wouldn't be too bothered about losing. Obviously, you want to win the cup, but because it's against Rangers, you want to stop them winning the trophy. So the league is the priority, but if Celtic win the league, you obviously have the chance to do a double, and doing it against Rangers would be ever so sweet. But on the other hand, you've got the chance for you could be going into that game, like you said, Steve, trying to stop a Rangers treble, which would be a dreaded moment
Absolutely
for Celtic season. But going by the drama we've had, you honestly wouldn't be surprised, and I wouldn't be surprised to see it go either way, honestly, between now and the end of the season.
Yeah, we'll find it. There we go. That's what I like, Plunge. That's the sign of positivity we like around here. They'll be trying to stop us doing a double. But it's true, isn't it? I mean, I came on, I've done a few shows, I spoke to yourself, Josh, and, as much as we've enjoyed getting ourselves back in a firm position at the top of the league, it is still very much a title race. I think we'd be completely ignorant to forget that fact. And also, I know it's a one-off game. You've got Aberdeen, who are literally, that is their season. It's a chance to get to final, it's a chance for silver, but it's a chance for Europe. It was we shot across the bow, was it not, Paddy, that result that, we got there in the end, but we made the laboured work off it, which is unfortunately something that's been indicative of this season. So it's just a stark reminder as we look towards the weekend, and probably what could be a tough game against Dundee, again fitting in that category, a team who, by all accounts, have nothing to lose and everything to gain if they can squeeze above St Mirren and get into Europe, eh?
Oh, 100%. Like the Aberdeen game, like you said, that was their season. That was their be all and end all. So they were obviously going to come out and go for it. They've got nothing else. They couldn't get top six. They couldn't get. They weren't really playing for anything else. This was their season at the end of the day. So yeah, by all means, they went for it, and good on them. They made a game of it. They seen our weaknesses and they exploited them. Thought the big lad was it Solar or what's his name? Solker, the bench. He was brilliant. Just holding the ball up and knocking it on, and just became an absolute nuisance. And Scales and even CCB couldn't handle him. I just think the big guy just made an absolute nuisance of himself, and I just hope that other teams watching don't take any
tips and hints.
Tips and hints for it, because do you know what? We're short at the back. We need to solidify that defence, and we need to do it rapid. We've got a couple of games left of the season that we need to get points. Once that's done and dusted, we really need to solidify that defence.
Well, that's it. We've got games to look forward to the weekend, but I want to just dive into what's been swirling about now. I'll put it straight there. It's Maeda, the shock package, the machine, our very own bionic man, appears to be in line for a shock return. Certainly not for the weekend, but with one eye on some of these key games. Because as we've seen, Brendan Rodgers was holding a wee private court with some investors, which I think is a sort of fancy way for corporate season ticket holders that have maybe got a wee bit more money than you and I, you know, they've maybe got a glass box to watch the game from. So he had a wee private one-on-one session with them, and quite a few interesting points, including the Maeda news came out of that, which we'll start to touch on. I think he somewhat, safe to say, pulled back the curtain a wee bit, wasn't it? It was it was an in-house situation. He could speak a wee bit more freely, and Brendan, he was very smart, was he not? He gave a couple of wee tidbits where he drip-fed information and points and things that he wanted to get out there without perhaps the magnifying glass of a baying mob of reporters wanting to spin or manipulate his words, eh? So the first, and we'll just go straight down to yourself, Josh, is exactly what it says in the tin. He let us know that it appears that Maeda, who was going over to Japan for a wee bit of specialist treatment we thought was a season-ending injury, and he's going to be back, or at least he's back in the pitch, he's training, and he looks as if he's going to play a part. When we talk about getting a boost out the blue, does it get any better than that for us?
Absolutely massive. I think the return of Maeda is even bigger when you look at the performances of some of the wingers at the weekend. Yeah, like Yang, like Palmer. He's just so crucial to the way Celtic play under Brendan Rodgers, even under Postecoglou as well, particularly for the Rangers games. You're going to play him twice between now and the end of the season. Yeah. He's crucial up against James Tavernier. People, Rangers fans will say James Tavernier has been really good in Glasgow derbies, scoring goals, etc. His goals in derbies have been penalties or free kicks. That's from set pieces. Absolutely. He has proved absolutely little threat going up and down that right-hand side, and that's because Maeda defends him so well. And having him in the team for those games would be absolutely massive. He's scored in 2 out of the last 3 visits to Ibrox as well. I know we're not playing him there, but he can still do that at Parkhead and at Hampden. So I think it'd be massive news if he does get back in time for obviously the Hearts game a week on Saturday, and then it'd be good for him to get maybe 60 minutes there and then a start in the derby, or maybe comes off the bench against Hearts and starts the derby. But yeah, it'd be massive because Yang at the weekend, I think I speak for most of the Celtic fans when I say that he was woeful, and having Maeda back in, especially because people point towards Forrest and potentially starting him at the weekend. And listen, I think Forrest is really good and he has an option, but the fitness side of things, Forrest can't last over 60 minutes. So having Maeda back in the team would be massive between now and the end of the season.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the thing, Paddy. We spoke, we covered it looking at the Rangers game. We were all sort of proven right with what he brings. As we say, much maligned. I think when his time's up at Celtic, he's definitely going to fall into that cult hero status, isn't he? He's going to be in there with, the sort of folk that are a mixed bag. You're Enrico Anonis and the likes of the game, with Peter Samaras. Definitely cult hero material. And as we say time and time again, it's not necessarily about what he brings from a technical standpoint, a crossing standpoint, a finishing standpoint. It's just the sheer energy and the defensive edge he gives it. I'm sure Tav would have woke up in a cold sweat the other night when that sort of started to filter his way through. But as Josh is saying, getting him in where we've got Palmer, we've tried the experiment with Yang, it's not quite working. It just takes the thought out of it, doesn't it? But is it imperative that we're selective as we would use him? If we could get 2 games out of him to now the end of the season, is it your 2 games against Rangers, or is it the Hearts and then Rangers in the league?
2 Glasgow derbies for me. Like we spoke about it as you touched on there, Steve. What he does to Tavernier is just frightening. Like he doesn't want the ball when he's playing against Dyson because he's just in his face, and he just gives you that 120% every single time. He just runs and runs and runs. And I spoke about it after it as well when we found out he was injured. And says no wonder he's injured. He covered every single blade of grass at Ibrox at least 3 times. He just ran and ran and ran. And do you know what? I can't wait to see the guy back. And you touched, he's not the best finisher. He can't cross a ball. listen, the ball hits half him and goes in, I'll take it. It's absolutely brilliant. With guys like Samaras done it. Remember, rounded McGregor and scored against them as well. And everybody's like, "Oh, he's brilliant." The following week, he's playing against Aberdeen, and he's fucking clean through, and absolute dross. And you're just like, "Oh man!" And he's one of these guys. He'll go down as a fan favourite, but everybody will remember what he done. Do you know what I mean? He's one of them.
I mean, it's certainly a shot in the arms, you say, and you touched on Yang, Josh. We all did. A few have said there as well that Yang's just not quite hitting the form, and that's, I suppose, a nice wee sort of segue into another thing that Rodgers brought up, which was actually referring back. He's almost came full circle on the talk about the way that we operate from a transfer, from a scouting sort of network, and what he came into. And I suppose when you look at, when you look at how necessary it is for us to have Maeda back, it just sort of harks back, as much as a positive, it puts into stark realisation and right at the front of everybody's attentions just how thin the overall quality and real options that we've got. No disrespect to James Forrest, but again, when he's the next best option, it's not an ideal place to be, is it? But as we look towards the summer, Josh, he did mention, he was asked also in this wee meeting around about what he came into, and it appears that what we suspected has been true. He was given assurances. He said that he was given assurances, and he was actually planning on just taking it easy. He was almost going to turn us away because he'd really been set on the idea taking time away from the game. But he had a chat with some of the board members, and notably Cal McGregor, and he was assured, he was told, we do things completely differently around here. There was an element of trust put in our now defunct scouting and Mr. Lowell Jr., who are going out there. But he also said that guys like Yang, Tilio, didn't necessarily name them, but we know who he's talking about. Your Yangs, your Lagerbielke, your Tilios, that although he said he was given sign-off, if you will, on players, that some of the signings were just too far advanced and almost in the bag, where he trusted judgment on these people because he thought about the due diligence there. And it turns out he's been sort of sold a dafty, isn't it? Do you think that?
I think Odin.
Effect?
I think Odin Holmes another one to put in that category as well. He was on holiday in Magaluf and met with Rodgers at his villa across in Santa Ponsa. Both hadn't signed for the club yet, but there you go. I think the scouting thing and the recruitment side of things, you look at, I think there was a rumour that went about a couple of months ago that there was certain criteria that this recruitment team had to meet for signing players. And it was below 5 million, had some sort of international experience, under 24, 23 years of age. And you look at every single player that Celtic signed over the summer and they fall into that criteria. I think the most we spent was 4.4 million on Mike Nawrocki. And Liam Scales is playing ahead of him, whether we like it or not. It's not a good look on the recruitment team that are now out the door, but Brendan obviously trusted them with some of the players that were signed last summer and where they are now. Look, Tillio's away back in Australia. Lagerbielke's not getting a look in. Other guys, Nawrocki's not playing, like I've just mentioned. Yang is poor. Kwon is out on loan at St Mirren. So it tells you a lot of what you need to know where those guys are now, and the amount of new signings that were signed over the summer, not January, Kunanida, but in the summer, who are actually playing and contributing at the minute is very few and far between. You look at the whole spine of the team, you look at even who's coming off the bench. James Forrest is still playing, although he's good. You probably should have, I would argue a couple of years ago, should have moved on from James Forrest, even though he has that quality, to be relying on him and let a title run in like this. I know we've got injuries, but look, you look at guys like Yang and Palma, there should be better, higher standards of player in there who can come in and play instead of relying on Forrest in a semi-final at the weekend. But that's a different debate. But it'll be interesting to see what happens this summer, I think.
Yeah, well, that's something we'll move on to, because there has been suggestions swirling there. But just to finish off on the last point there, Paddy, is it actually then been misplaced trust. You know, in the fullness of time when we look at this season, you know, touch wood, I'd like to think, you know, we've all got the faith here and we're all very much positive that we will get the next 3 games over the line and that's going to be enough to carry us to the title. But there is always going to be some learning to take it. There's going to be takeaways from every single season. And, you know, as we saw whenever it got to, we brought in Bernardo and we brought in Kuhn and we brought in Ida. Those are 3 guys that, let's be honest, they had you can maybe argue the toss about Bernardo, but certainly I think his player profile, they had the sort of more DNA, the fingerprints of Rodgers on it. And I actually remember Rodgers came out, and I'm just paraphrasing also, whereby when he spoke about Ida, he was quite scathing and he said that he was contacted directly by his agent. He was excited when he got the opportunity and he pushed it through. And that they're moving on. He likes to think he's got an eye for a player, and hopefully he will be trusted. So those are obviously 3 players that have come in. Bernardo's been a mixed bag. He scored some all right goals, a big goal against Rangers. Kuhn has lately mixed bag, but again shown that there's something there. And Adam Ida, again, a mixed bag, but by and large, very much contributing with vital goals. So do you think that, first and foremost, the way that he's talking in these things, do you again anticipate that Rodgers will be around for the summer, no matter what way things go, and that there is going to be a sea change and we're going to see a bit more involvement and a bit more Rodgers-esque signings? Are we going to finally get that quality that he was talking about?
When he came back from his wee stint down at Leicester, we spoke about it, and we'd said basically he'd come back because he's been promised what he didn't have before, and that was basically a budget. Because let's face it, when he was here before, the only reason he left was, yes, he was going down there to try again at the Premier League and whatever, but he had a budget, he had money to spend, and he didn't have that at Celtic. And that showed when Lenny obviously came in and took over. The players that Brendan brought in when he was here, guys like Scotty Sinclair and players like that, and Edward, and I mean, these guys were outstanding. Yeah, we paid a wee bit for Edward and stuff like that, but they'd done the job. They were quality players. Not like your Yang, your these dafties that are at the club at the minute. The Adam Ida thing, yeah, I kind of get it. And yeah, I like him. He's scoring goals. Look at Majowski. There's the whole argument. Would you rather have had him? He was here, he was scoring in the Premier League, he was doing a job. I think the big guy would still do the damage, and I'd probably look at him in the summer, even just to bring him in to stop him scoring against us. That'd be ideal.
But that's if they stay up, of course, they're in their own troubles.
Brendan also spoke about Mikey Johnson's return, so there's somebody that's going to take place on that left-hand side. Again, that's Brendan when he's tried and trusted, isn't it? It's the Mikey Johnson, your James Forrest, your obviously Davy Turnbull in there as well. These guys that he knew what they could do, and he put them in there. He knew he could trust them to do a job. Mm-hmm. And it's, if Brendan has got any say, then I've got full confidence that he'll bring in the right type of player that Celtic need.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that point, definitely. And what concerns me though is obviously these guys, Mark Law and these guys have moved on, right? Moved on a couple of months ago. We're now sitting, date today is the 25th of April, right? The season finishes exactly a month from today.
Yeah.
Now, under Postecoglou, we were already getting comments and press conferences about this time of the season that plans are underway for the summer. Yeah. And whereas now, we don't even know what's happening with the recruitment side of things at the club. We don't know, is it Rodgers that's taking charge? Are we getting a new head of recruitment? Are we getting a director of football in? There's been pretty much a lack of coherence surrounding that. And just touching on your point, Steve, about Adam Ida, Rodgers getting the call being offered. There was a report in Football Scotland the other day, who are relatively reliable with Celtic transfers, about a player called Charles Pickle, make of that name what you will, from Cremonese in Serie B, that Celtic have been offered his services in the summer. Now, you want to be, for Celtic, actively looking for players, not being offered players. As much as they might come in and be good, you want to be actively looking. And there's several positions in that team that need frantically addressed in the summer. Goalkeeper is just one. And for me, it is a bit concerning at the minute the lack of coherence surrounding the recruitment side of things at the club.
No, that's true, and it is a concern. As we say, it's kind of funny. We knew the long name that was out there. That was self-explanatory. But then we got the second member of staff who had been told that they were no longer in position. I think it was the first time their name had ever came up. Such is the way that we seem to conduct our business, where there's people in post that we don't even really know who they are, let alone what they do. And that's always been a concern for me. We've spoke for a long times about this notion of we're going to get a director of football and work towards a more European or larger club model, and it's never really came through and done it. And that's exactly, what people are asking. You can see in the comments, bringing up director of football. I think it's imperative. We are very close to the close season, and our season at the end could go one of two ways. We obviously face what we had last season, whereby we're straight into Champions League. It should all be about further planning, advanced planning. Or it could be the flip side where we're having to qualify. Now, I would like to see some sort of movement, some sort of transparency for the club and telling us what their intentions is. Setting out a roadmap for the fans so that it's predictable and we know where we're at, because it's coming to that time again. You're going to be getting a letter through your door about your season ticket renewal. It may go up, it may stay the same, but it's a lot of money. And at this moment in time, I know there's more important things on the pitch, but when fans are being asked to pay for something blindly, you want to know exactly what's coming on. And that'll bring me on to, as you say, is around about the scouting, the recruiting. Again, it's only swirls, it's only rumours, but there has been talk that there's going to be a complete change in the way that we do business. Come back to what we're discussing and saying that we hope that Rodgers is going to be more involved. We're going to get more Rodgers type players. Again, Ida, Bernardo, whether you think they're great or indifferent, they've got a certain wage attached to them, a certain price tag, and I know that doesn't always guarantee results, but there is the chat that we're going to move away once again from project signings, from that £1 to £3 million range, and we're going to start making more regular of the 5 above sort of £1 million signings, which you would think would be the quality that we've been talking about. I've said this and tried to champion it for a long time. We've got a very good player trading model, but rather than trying to buy a player that's 1 million or 2 million, the hope that you end up selling them for, a profit of 18 million, 15 million or something like that. Bring it down, increase the base level of the squad, the likes of 4, 5, 6 million. You will still sell them on if they're good. Yes, your profit might be smaller, but if you can keep doing that and make more predictable profits rather than, one works out, one you tear up the contract, as we've seen time and time again, then that'll be able to improve where we operate. But what do you think? Both of you, I've come to both of you on it. What do you think of that? Do you think, I know that there is change afoot, there's a lot of uncertainty, but see this chat of wanting to up the ante in terms of the spending and becoming the base level around about the 5 million mark. So let's not forget, we make out as if that's a lot of money, but it isn't actually. We paid 6 million for Chris Sutton all those years ago, and it now seems as if it's some unachievable madness to do so. Do you think that's just, firstly yourself, Josh, as a season ticket holder, are you taking it with a pinch of salt? Is it just PR spin to try and get the fans G'd up, or do you actually think something will happen this year?
Well, you'd hope something will happen, but I remember last summer when Brendan Rodgers came in, there was talk of these 10, 15 million pound players coming in the door, and then a couple of weeks after he joined the club, there was a Sky Sports interview that went out where he was saying it's unrealistic for Celtic to sign players at 10, 15 million pounds, and it seems to have been the case for the last couple of years. The last decent fee I remember Celtic shelling out on a player, correct me if I'm wrong, was Chris Julian at the £7 million mark. Yep. Now, I think his acquisition, or you look at Cameron Carter-Vickers and Jota as well, but Julian, let's just take him as a specific example, and Cameron Carter-Vickers and Jota. Now, like you've said, 6-7 million is not a lot of money to spend on a player in the modern market. Maybe it is in Scotland, but not in the modern market for the way Celtic should be looking to compete in European competition. Now, spending that money, Julian came in, and I suppose it was an injury that kind of robbed him of a really prestigious Celtic career. He was really good in that year that was curtailed by COVID, scoring winner against Lazio, winner in a cup final, and he was a well-respected member of a team. that won a treble. And then obviously Cameron Carter-Vickers and Jota, their contributions speak for themselves. Cameron Carter-Vickers is third choice captain. He'll be vice captain next season when Joe Hart retires. So it just shows that spending this amount of money on players is actually beneficial in the long run. And spending what, 1, 2, 3 million?
Yeah.
And you can think of few successes. The club, Matt O'Reilly is one who have come in and actually been really good, that have been signed for that amount of money. Odsonne Edouard, £9 million. Very successful striker who goes on to make a decent bit of money in the future as well. So do I have optimism that I'm going to spend this amount of money on players? I'm not going to lie, I don't. But you never know. Things can change rapidly, especially if Celtic qualify for this Champions League in summer. You look at the amount of money that could be got in from that, 60 million pounds, 50 million pounds, chat of that. With already the amount of money that's in the bank, it's very hard to imagine Celtic continuing on with the current transfer policy of project signings when that amount of money is in the bank. And the more this happens, the fans will begin to realise it. More fans begin to realise that there's a good few who do already. And it will be just a matter of time before things are forced into change rather than change by themselves, in my opinion. But we'll just have to wait and see what happens this summer.
Yeah, it's always a mystery, unfortunately, with the club. That's the one thing that I think really disappoints. There's no doubt, Paddy, that we run a fantastic business, but the badge doesn't say the Celtic Accounting Club. You know, it says Celtic Football Club, and that's something that we need to take note on. You know, Josh touches on the finances. You know, I think we've got circa, about 50, 60 million pounds sitting in the bank. If the Champions League comes up, just for qualifying, you're on to at least up to 60 million. That's before your season, your pass to the games, which is now going to be an increased amount of games. So it's going to be easily well over £200. That's before the 4 shirts that come out, the probably 5 training ranges and everything else that comes with that. You know, then we've also got potential sell on. It looks almost like a stick on. A Frimpong could be anywhere up to 6 or 7 million in income from him. Then there's the season tickets. So really, you know, we've said this for season upon season upon season, but if ever there's going to be a time, if we get this league in the bag, that there really isn't an excuse, it's got to be this year, is it not? Surely.
Again, Josh said it, we hope so. We're not used to it. You said about spending this 6 million, 7 million on players and stuff. Kyogo, Hatate, these guys, we didn't spend that on them. I think we got them and Gucci for a collective, what was it, 2 mil, if that?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I don't think it's about spending as much as this. I mean, fair enough, yeah, we go down south and you see somebody, I don't know, I hope Brendan would have brought up that guy, was it Timothy Castagna? I thought he'd brought him up for
Leicester.
The boy Ricardo Pereira, whatever his name is. Guys like that, I thought they'd do brilliant up here, they'd run amok. But they were talking about 6, 7 million at that time, and I was going, right, that's only because they're at Leicester. Surely there's other guys of that kind of standard that we can pick off. I would love to see Celtic go out and spend 5, 6 million on decent players, but I just don't think we're that club. I really don't. I see us as a team who's going to look for the cheaper option, the bargain basement player. And that might just be me. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Kyogo's worked, Hatate's worked, Gucci didn't, he's a way back. The big guy we brought in, Kobayashi, didn't work, sent him back. I'd like to see us go out there and spend a fortune, I really would, but I can't see it.
Yeah. You know, I think the concerns is the comments are coming in here, and everybody makes a good point as well. You know, let's take into account we've got these guys, and we've come back just to brightly touch on the previous regime and the way that we were signing guys. Yes, we had some great success, but a lot of the great successes in the early stages, let's face it, were guys that Ange Postecoglou well and truly knew. When it comes to guys like Tilio, it comes to guys like Yang, Kobayashi, that seems to be almost when he was not so involved. Now, some will say that no, they were his signings, others will say that they weren't. But I think if anybody wants to kid themselves on that the club didn't know well in advance of these guys getting signed, that Ange Postecoglou was off, to me, they fall back onto the failed operations for the scouting network, and they're the last vestiges of a complete and utter nonsense. And if, as I said earlier, when we look at guys like Kuhn, Ida and Bernardo, all right, they might not be everybody's cup of tea, but they're certainly a cut above. what we've just spoke about there. And that is probably having that Rodgers involvement. But yeah, looking at it, the one thing that he constantly said is that we needed 3 or 4 quality players.
Yeah.
You can argue that we've maybe got 2 of those in Ida and Bernardo, but again, they are loans. But then if we look across the board, other people are saying in the comments, it's more than likely that we will sell 1 player. I'd like to hope not, but it's probably going to be Matt O'Reilly, I would dare say, and you could be talking up to 20 million, so there's more money in the coffers. But Josh, these 3 to 4 guys of quality you've touched on, and I believe you also wanted to mention Greg Taylor. I'll let you bring that up as well. But we're looking at 3 to 4 guys, but we'll be potentially losing Matt O'Reilly. We're definitely losing Hart. There's interest from Aberdeen and Siegrist, and then there's the wastage of squad players that we will just naturally get rid of. O's well out the picture. He could be someone that's getting moved on as well as the others. So your 3 to 4 quality guys suddenly turns into 6 or 7 quality guys before you're even looking at average options to pad out the squad, as you will. So, what's your thoughts about that? And I'll also let you bring in Taylor, because you informed me something that he was saying.
Yeah, so on the recruitment side of things in the summer, touching on like players and players leaving, it's going to be big. It's going to be a big summer. Probably the biggest summer Celtic have had since the Ange Postecoglou's, when he initially inherited the job, and he inherited an absolute mess of a team then. Because his second season, Celtic just won a double, and it was about progressing into Ange Ball season 2. And then when he left, it was Rodgers just trying to continue on that success of a treble. Mm-hmm. And now it's just the squad, the recruitment team that's just departed has let this squad run so thin on quality and so thin on good players that there's now a big job that lies ahead for whoever is taking charge. We don't know who it is at this point. But yeah, Greg Taylor. So these comments, I think they were made after the Cup semi-final, because they came out in the papers during the week earlier on, and it's just regarding his contractual situation. So his current deal expires summer of 2025, so that's basically a year from now, the next season. And he says he has 1 year left, but there have been no talks over a new deal. He says his specific words are, "I just want to take care of these next 6 games, and then everything else will take care of itself." So he hasn't been offered a new deal yet. We know Celtic were quite insistent on getting their key players tied down to big contracts, and I think that would have partly been Brendan Rodgers' activity in that. Look at Matt O'Reilly, Daisen Maeda, Kyogo all got new deals 2027 to 2028 just at the beginning of this season. Now, Greg Taylor, with his contract ending at a similar time to those guys, wasn't included in that group of players who is not being extended, who had been extended. Now that, to me, says something about Brendan Rodgers trusting him and his future plans for the left-back situation. I think Taylor will eventually get a new deal, because Celtic will sign a new left-back, but he's a good player to have around as a backup, not a starting left-back, a backup left-back. That has to be said. I don't know, what do you think? Do you think should keep Taylor around, or do you look at...
I'm in the same camp as one of your podcast friends on here, Liam. I think Greg Taylor sometimes can be a man down. He's like you say, he's a backup. He wouldn't be my first choice. I would have had Barnaby in there. I would have had Scales in there. I would have had anybody in there other than him. I'd have played Hatate at left back if I had to. Honestly, I just feel like he's got no positional sense whatsoever. Somebody commented earlier on, I don't know who it was, that said they would play Daisen as a left wing back. Do you know what? I would rather that than have Taylor on the park. Put Yang up the top and have Daisen behind him to bomb past him. Or even Palmer, because Palmer cuts back every time anyway. So if Maeda's running past him, that'll free up that area. That could be a good shout. But yeah, a left back for me is a priority signing. I just think Taylor, he's not been offered anything because he's not seen as one of the guys that we want to be keeping in. Brendan said when he come in that we need quality players, and I think Celtic took a dip in that period, and that's when we were all talking about it. We're going, Brendan's basically turning around and saying these players aren't good enough to play for Celtic, and I think the players kind of took a wee bit of a huff about it at that time, and we did hit a bad patch And now he's got the team back on with him, and they've seen his vision, and they know what they need to do, they know what they need to be, and the players are now kicking on to be in a Brendan Rodgers team. They know what it needs.
No, I think I think Josh, to answer your question, I think he's probably going to be an option. He'll fall into what I always say about Scales. He's an option. He's not the solution.
Yeah.
If you're saying we've got somebody there that's been in and around the club, he's been around the Scottish game, and he can fill a void, against the quote unquote lesser teams. When you're looking at squad rotation, yeah, he fits a bill. If you can keep him on a relatively lower wage, I would keep him on for less than he's on right now. That'd be for him to make a choice. But it's pretty clear where we are with the left back situation, and there's undoubtedly that's going to be somewhere I think Rodgers is going to be looking at, because he also made the brave decision to let the madman that is Alexandro Bernabei get shipped out on loan to Brazil. And when he was asked the question as to why, when we were crying out for a left back, he essentially says Scales is the backup to Greg Taylor. So, two players that we've spoke about at length, Paddy and I have certainly been in the not so overly positive camp about both of them. We all do think the left side is very, very weak, but that tells you and speaks volumes that if we had a crisis, he would rather fire Scales out to left back and patch it out with one of the other options that have been much up and down and chopped and changed in the centre half, even at such a vital run-in. Because remember, when he made that call, we were behind in the league. Mm-hmm. So that shows you exactly what his thoughts on that position are. But it is one of many positions that we will have to look at, and I would certainly be expecting us to have one or two players of a left back position, certainly a nailed on actual full blown left back, but potentially another who can play in maybe the likes of a back three over at the left or something. And I've also discussed the potential of why didn't we ever look at potentially going to a back three with Nawrocki, Carter Vickers and Scales. So, there is options there, but I think these are things that are going to have to be pre-season. You're not messing about with that formula right now, are you?
No, I wouldn't say so. Even touching on Bernabei, said obviously Rodgers' trust in him is very low, and the Internacional manager's trust in him seems to be very low because he's been benched the last 3 games and he's played 1 game since he's joined them.
He'd turn up steaming for training or something?
Yeah, exactly. Probably wouldn't surprise me back in Brazil, but he gave it all for the jersey when he played Bernabei, but just wasn't a lot of signings up to the required standard.
Yeah, it's just a bit poor, isn't it? But yeah, there's much there. We can speculate and we can go on as much as we can around about the transfers. In the fullness of time, as we approach the summer, that'll be something that we'll be covering in great detail as the rumours start to come in. It's everybody's favourite time of the season. And if Hollywood Brendan's still about, we know that it's going to be an interesting one. But there's other things to address that have come out in this week. And it was also something that Brendan did touch on. And, across social media, there's been a lot of mixed reactions to it. So I just want to bring it up to yourself, which is it jobs for the boys? Because, we've seen the other pieces of news, which was firstly that Darren O'Day, it was him and McManus, they were in there with the B team, or the reserves as they used to be called. And he's suddenly been moved into the position of professional player pathways. He's in charge of that. He's the man that's going to make sure that everybody for the youth up to the reserves are get a direct, clear run at a route that they can believe in that will get them into the Celtic first team walking out of Parkhead. Take that with a pinch of salt. But the reason I'm saying is it jobs for the boys, and I'll rewind back. We always talk about at our club that it's stale, that there's nepotism at play, even, dare we say, a wee bit of arrogance there, laziness in terms of how we operate about it. And, we only need to look as far back as when Don Mackay left. We just happened to have the guy who used to be our accountant and Mr. Nicholson. He was the most qualified guy. He suddenly become the CEO, having never done it. Or you've got guys like Strachan and Strachan's other boy who just happen to be the best candidates for their respective jobs, as is McManus, an ex-player, and O'Day, an ex-player. I know these guys have got their badges before anybody tells me. But then the latest one to coincide with that is that we've also seen there's an under-18s job up for grabs, and the names that have been mentioned are Johnny Hayes and Charlie Mulgrew. I know that this is an area, Josh, that you are very invested in with the youth and younger football, so I'll come to yourself first, but I just want to know what your thoughts on that is. I understand the key benefits of having players that have been there, done it, they're Celtic men, and they know what it takes to win, but are we maybe playing at it, and are we maybe, fans have got a right to sort of say, here we go again, by it just being names almost pulled out of a hat, and it seems a bit unimaginative?
Yeah, I think fans have every right to feel the way they feel, given the names that have been mentioned. I don't think they fill many with confidence. But at the same time, if someone turned around and said Henrik Larsson was going to be the manager of the under-18s, I think there would be a lot of excitement. Now, Charlie Mulgrew was saying to you guys just before we started this stream that he's been at Brighton, observing Roberto De Zerbi. He's been at Southampton, he's been all around the country looking at Brendan Rodgers as well. And I'll look at the examples now. There's two sides to this. I think you can put it in. Jobs for the boys is definitely a valid argument that's there. But looking over at Spain and Real Sociedad, Xabi Alonso, so he came through their academy, and we know how successful he is at Bayer Leverkusen now. His first ever coaching / management role was of the Real Sociedad B team. Now, a point I would raise is if these guys who can certainly become successful managers in the future, like Mulgrew could, we don't know what he's like, we don't know his style, who, if the clubs that are associated with them aren't going to give them a chance, who is going to give them a chance to get into the game? I don't know. Well, maybe you could argue Pollock United will give them a chance, but realistically, is he going to go there? I don't know. But I think it's not encouraging for supporters, and I can completely understand that. And it is a bit concerning that these guys potentially are convenient and are the guys that are just there and have good relationships with the club rather than actually seeking someone. Because I'm sure if you put out a post for Celtic under-18s manager, there would be a long list of quite exciting names that would probably apply for that job, young, upcoming coaches. But Charlie Mulgrew and Johnny Hayes particularly, he's coached Aberdeen's under-16s for a year now. I don't know how he's doing there in terms of success, and that Mulgrew's not had a coaching role yet that we know of that's listed in his CV. It's interesting. Stuart McLaren was the most recent manager of the 18s. They won the Scottish Youth Cup last year, actually, and this year they crashed out of that to Montrose in like second or third round, and it's Rangers v Aberdeen in the final next week. But yeah, I don't know. There's two ways you can look at it, in my opinion, and it's not exciting at the same time, but you just, I don't know how to feel about it, to be honest.
Yeah. I mean, what about yourself, Paddy? As he says, we're not going to sit here and profess that we are experts in the B team, the youth squad, the setup, etc. But it comes back to what we say is there, we've just pointed out that we previously had a manager that was successful. Yeah, it didn't work out well there. But in terms of these names, particularly as it says, look at Nicholson. We're told he was the best candidate. There's no transparency. We're not really told of was there interview processes, etc., etc. It seems the same again where we got in O'Day and we got in McManus. If we actually look how the B team's doing, they're playing in the Lowland League against the likes of Cumbernauld. They're underneath East Kilbride. They're underneath Bo'ness. They're underneath Hearts. Youth. They're sitting in 5th place. They're playing guys, no disrespect, they're playing like civil service stores and stuff, and we've undoubtedly got better resources, etc. But they're still not really setting the heather alight in there. I'm just sort of thinking, is it laziness? Is it convenience? But the question would be, who would take these jobs on? I don't imagine they're the most, healthiest of paying jobs. They'll be better probably than you and I maybe will be getting on wages. But if we really got to, we spoke at the turn of the season when Rodgers came in and done his press conference, and he spoke about us wanting to be class leading in all departments of football. We're spending heavy investment in the Barrafield redevelopment for the youth team, for the reserves, for the women's team. Does this sort of belie and almost undermine that sort of message that we want to be class leading when we're basically just going to guys, albeit with the badges, that are in-house almost?
Yeah, I'm surprised Neil Lennon's not in there, to be honest. I'm sure Neil put his hat in for it. Yeah, I get it. We're supposed to be one of these clubs that are good at bringing young players through. The young lads before we've brought through, you have McGeady's and guys like this, James Forrest, Callum McGregor. These are guys that all come through the academy, and you look at them and you go, right, brilliant. Celtic were always one of the teams that you brought the guys through the academy, and there was always a couple of academy players in there that come through and burst on the scene. And was it young lad Kelly? He's our newest. You had him up with Dembele a few years back as well, and
also got Frame as well, who's sort of been in and around, but not really got a chance.
All these young lads, and do you know, I'd love it. I'd love Celtic to have that set in place and be battering these teams in the Lowland League. Like you say, they're playing against Albion Rovers, who recently got relegated into that league as well, and they're not doing too good against these mobs. They're playing against guys who are out doing a shift and then going to play a game of football. And these guys are supposed to be professional footballers. I get it, but yeah, we should be leagues ahead of them. We should be winning that pretty much every season, I would imagine. We should be progressing these guys through.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. We should be looking at it again, just to touch on that idea, Josh, of being sort of class leading in what we do, you know, and we're obviously trying to show some sort of shoots of positivity with the redevelopment, because, you know, whether folk think it's money wasted or whatever way they want to spin it, you know, we should be having matched, you know, facilities for our younger team. We can't overcrowd Lennoxtown, and we need to make it a stepping stone where it's, you start down at Barrowfield to work towards the bright lights that should be Lennoxtown, and that's what it should all be about. It's all about taking things seriously and wanting to push on. You know, again, coming back to what we touched on, the form of the B team and things like that as well. The thing I was wanting to ask, Josh, you know, it doesn't need to be completely out the box thinking, does it? I mean, yeah, it would be nice to align and match up and have external influences, external managers that aren't attached to the club with fresh new ideas to reinvigorate maybe the way these guys play. Is that something that we really should be doing? Now, listen, I'm not going to say that we shouldn't. There's not a place for jobs for the boys and the boys being around. Folk that have been there and done it, because I always think that you need that identity in place, whether it's the first team, you know, that's the constant of John Kennedy, whether folk like him or, you know, hate him. He is a constant. He's there. He's been through several managers, and he creates that real Celtic authenticity that helps whoever the manager's going to be. You know, a Ange Postecoglou, for example, who's came out of nowhere, or a Ronnie Dyler, who don't have that background. So is there room to have these guys in at the club in a assisting role? And, you know, look at some of the guys that Rodgers has got, his networking. Why are we not looking at people that he's worked with before? Whether that's been, you know, down at, when he's been down in Wales, or when it's been down at Leicester. There's got to be better options out there, isn't there?
Well, I think there certainly is a place for guys like your O'Days and your Steve McManus to be there to help these young players come through, or else, like you say, that Celtic identity. You've even got it in a core of Scottish Celtic players, like you've mentioned, McGregor, Forrest, even Welsh falls into that category now for me, that they've been there, they've been round the block, and they know what the club is. But at the same time, you want to, in all areas of the team, this comes in the playing squad, this comes in the management, this comes in the coaching staff, and the academy falls into this bracket as well, the women's team, whatever it may be. It's not healthy for any organisation or just business or anything in general in the world to have everything the same. You need, like you say, an injection of new ideas and a different outlook on things, because that is mostly beneficial. It's like when you're doing a podcast, you need people of different viewpoints to make it good. And that certainly takes place in the Celtic Academy. You need that to make it look good. Just on the B team, you know, a lot of people say their form has been poor this season and they've been shocking, etc. Now, first half of the season, yes, they've been poor, but since the 23rd of December, they've lost one game. And a lot of players in that team, it is their first season at B team level. They've just moved up from under 18s. And from last season, they finished third in the league, only about 5-6 points behind the eventual winners of the Lowland League. They've lost, well, Bosun Lawal was playing last season. Two boys who are now out on loan in Austria were regulars. The captain, Matthew Anderson, at left back, 19, he's out on loan in Austria. Daniel Kelly was regularly playing last season. Mitchell Frame, now he's injured. He's been injured for a long, long while. So there has been a lot of transition in the B team this season. In the first half of the campaign, yes, they were poor, but they did pull off some good results in the youth league. They beat Lazio away. They ran Feyenoord very close home at Lesser Hampden. And the age of a lot of these players, there's a player called Sean McArdle who's made quite a few appearances this season. He's 16 years of age.
Pretty good going for a B team, isn't it?
Lewis Dobby, Daniel Cummings are both 18. Daniel Cummings turned 18 a week and a half ago, so he's played the majority of this season as a 17-year-old, still in school. Corey Thompson, 18. Now you'll argue that all these guys, this should be the age they are playing at this level. But at the same time, for the first campaign, just coming straight out of 18s football, youth football, where they're playing against 16, 15-year-olds, to go straight into the men's game and to have been on an unbeaten run of 17 games after Christmas, only to have lost their first one, I think it was 6-4 a couple of weeks ago. They've done pretty well in the second half of the campaign. And I think having watched them a few times, there are a lot of similarities between the way they play and the way the first team play. And when you're looking to bring young players through, you need that sense of seamless transition where the style is the same. I've watched Scotland under 21s quite a lot of times, and the way they play formation-wise and style-wise is exact same as the way the Scotland men's team play.
I think that's very much the Germany setup as well, isn't it? They go from youth straight up. They play the same system so that it's familiar.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and you need that to get the players, because you don't want guys who are like 18, 19 to be playing a 5-3-2 in the B team and then just coming up straight to the Celtic first team where it's a 4-2-3-1, 4-3-3, and the centre half who's been playing in a back five is now one of only two centre halves, and he's getting a lot of space and time in the ball, and it's going to be tough for him. So having that is good, and perhaps so if you're going to bring in a new face, right, that's all good, but you need to tell that new face who comes in from, whether it be Sweden, Norway, France, I don't know, England, that it has to be this sense of structure throughout all of the academy, from 14s, 15s, 16s, 18s, up to the B team level, and then eventually first team. That has to be the same, because that only benefits the young players. It'll just be interesting to see where this 18s appointment goes, and seeing how this Darren Adie's new, even though the official term, professional player pathway, whatever it is, role he's got. But interesting to see, however long he holds that role, how many players make it into the first team and make a mark in the first team. We've seen Vata get his chance, Kelly, Frame would probably get more opportunities if he wasn't injured half the time. But it'll be interesting to see what happens when this all fizzles out and how long he's been in the role for.
No, definitely. I think we do, before I've just got you there, Paddy, I think, I see some comments and I know that this maybe seems like a wee bit a sort of a side note. It is just something. This is we'll always talk about what's going on in the world of Celtic, and this is pertinent in current news. Yes, we do have a title fight on our hands. We've got 6 massive games, and, we will always get around to that, but there's got to be breathing space for everything that comes out. And this comes back to something that Rodgers said in his wee private court that he had with investors. Was he was saying about how he was, and one of the things that he was enthusiastic about was young development. And do you know what, we're talking, and we should be thinking about the first team and spending the money and getting the proper investment and getting in quality, but at the same time Celtic should be looking to try and cultivate young players and getting the likes of these guys into the squad. So it is worth talking about. And obviously when it comes back to the investment, I saw another one saying Fran Alonso should be getting that kind of job. Well, again, we talk about investment, and this is across the board at Celtic Football Club. Fran Alonso actually left. One of his reasons for leaving was because he was told that his investment in his squad was going to be cut to non-existent. So again, it comes back to what I was asking the question, Paddy, about with these appointments and the way that we go about our business and creating pathways and getting these guys in the door and doing well, as Josh has been able to point out to us there. We need to be doing right by all levels of the club, don't we? And I'm not saying that the investment that we spend there is massive, but if you look at big clubs across the world, their academy, their youth setup is almost treated as a separate entity. Yes, it's part of the bigger club, but it has its own finances and its own expectancies. That's really what we should be looking to do, is it not? Using even that, if we go and we cherry pick guys from, the best teams in League Two, the best teams in League One, bring them in, and see if they break through and eventually can get somewhere with us, great. See if what we do is we end up selling them for 50,000 to another team and we make something on them. Do we need to start trying to make our other entities of the Celtic Football Club operating and pulling its weight a wee bit? It's not going to be the same as it's selling a guy for 20 million, but every bit's going to help, is it not?
That's it. Every little helps. Like Josh touched on a lot of the Celtic team there. Is there any that you reckon, Josh, that could jump straight in? Any good left backs there?
And I really like Magnus Mackenzie, left back. He's 18 years old. He's bombs up and down that left hand side. Now I've not seen much of Mitchell Frame this season because he's been injured, but I really do like the look of Mackenzie now. Can he make that jump straight away? I'm not entirely sure. He trained with the first team for a bit in pre-season. He was involved, but we've not really seen him in there since.
Mm-hmm.
He's one who's irregularly gets goals and assists. He seems to have a good relationship with who plays in the left wing for Celtic B team, and he gets up and down that left hand side with ease, and he can put in a tackle as well. Can even play on the left wing. So I do really like the look of him. In terms of other positions, there's ones to watch, like young 16-year-olds that I mentioned, McCardle, who's coming through. He's got a really good left peg on him. Young red-headed boy, so he's good as well. Striker Daniel Cummings is only just turned 18. He's got quite a few goals. Lewis Dobby's in a really good scoring streak at the minute. I think it's like 14 in 29 games or something like that. Now, for an 18-year-old in the B team who have somewhat, sitting fifth in the table right now, it is pretty good. And I think there's a lot of, you can draw comparisons to Rangers now. Celtic, it seems to me, those at the top of the club base their success off Rangers, just edging ahead of them at times.
Yeah,
Rangers aren't even in the Lowland League at the minute. They've chose to withdraw last season, and Celtic played them once this campaign. It was in the Glasgow Cup, which Celtic qualified for the final for last night, actually. Celtic played them once this season, and they scudded them 3-0 at Lennoxtown, and Mackenzie stood out in that game, Magnus. So he's one I would look at, left back, and see what happens pre-season, because you usually do see a lot of these young faces coming in and getting minutes in a friendly, so he's one to look out for. Then obviously Bosun Lawal down at Fleetwood, when he comes back, will make an impact as well.
I think Bosun will make a big impact. I spoke to him previously on the show. I've been impressed with him. It'd be nice. Obviously, once we get the league sewn up after 4 games, that gives us a couple of games to get these young lads in and give them a wee taster. Steve, you'd said about the youth academies and stuff like that. I remember back in the day it was always Ajax. I don't know if it's still the same. Everybody was always about Ajax youth, because they were the exact same, and they done, like you said, their formation was the exact same as the first team, and they just seemed so well drilled. You could take a kid at 14 years old and stick him right into that first team, and it'd have been seamless. And Ajax were always like that. And you look at the players that have come through their system over the years, and it's a frightening list. I'd love to see Celtic do that investment. Like you say, we are starting to invest. So I'd love to see that. Spread the money a little bit. Rather than spending 10, 12 million on these players. Invest a bit in the youth, invest a bit in bringing these boys through, and see if we can get another Callum McGregor. Somebody like that, somebody that's going to, that knows what the club's about.
No, I think, you know what, we'll quickly finish up on this one. We're getting a wee bit of trouble talking about the youth teams. No, as I say, listen, I understand, there is games to win. There's more pressing matters afoot. Certainly, of course there is. But as we say, there's very little in the way of things that we've got to speak about this month and this week, and these are the things that are coming out. But just to quickly finish up and wrap it up, in regards to youth and reserves and things like that, you've named off a few players there, which is good to see, and that's why that's one of the things that you're certainly going to be able to bring to this podcast, and those that are watching are interested in other sides of the Celtic team from youth up to B team. Josh is the man that's going to use his finger on that pulse, so good news if that is your bag. And certainly for myself, as I say, I don't profess to know these things, but I am learning every day when I'm speaking to Josh, and it actually gets you quite excited to keep an eye on these things. The only one thing I want to ask real quick is how competitive really is the Lowland League? As we say, it's part-timers and stuff. I've always sort of championed the notion of trying, where money comes into it is another story, for teams to be reinstated into, if not a reserve league, because I know that comes with a cash money attachment, but let's just say a hypothetical. You could get 6 teams who were, or 5 teams or whatever, who were willing to put in the money that it costs to get dropped into League One and League Two. With the notion of being, say, you've got 3 that get put in League One, that could be Celtic, Rangers, Hearts, for talking sake, and then in League Two it was Aberdeen, Motherwell, whoever, right? Where the idea is these teams can be promoted and relegated. You know, the team that the top 2 teams that perform in their respective leagues, the top 2 teams in the above League One, they stay. The one that finishes lowest out those 3 SPFL teams, they relegate up, and then it's same. The one that finishes top, that goes up, and the bottom 2 stay down. Is that something really that looks viable that we should maybe look into for more competitive, to try and create a more direct pathway rather than playing against guys that have been out in the site during the week and then out in the pitch on the weekend?
Yeah, well, I think that would be a good idea in practice, in theory, rather, but when you actually go to implement that, I think it'd be very tough. There was even a lot of flack and a lot of stick about the B teams even going into the Lowland League, and a vote only passed by the skin of its teeth to keep B teams in the Lowland League for next season. So to even try and instate them into the SPFL 42 pyramid, I think it'd be very hard. There actually is an SPFL reserve league. Not many people know about, actually. Teams like Kilmarnock, Livingston, Allfield teams in that division. Now, whether that's something Celtic B could potentially get involved with, I don't know. Maybe that's something to look into for next season. But Lowland League is giving them a challenge, clearly, when you look at their standing in the table and when you look at results throughout the season. I would only perhaps look at changing that if Celtic were romping to that league every season and winning it by 10, 15 points. But at the minute, that isn't happening. If it does, then maybe you look at putting up in the ante and making these players play at a higher level. But at the minute, I'd stick it to where it is.
Well, I've enjoyed the wee chat and the wee deep dive into the youth and other things. As I say, it's not something that we regularly talk about here. As I say, and as time goes on, you know, once we get a season out, it's something we'll look more towards and try to integrate that into our sort of content. But listen, just real quickly, a wee quick 5 minutes to cover it before we go. There's games back at the weekend. It's back to league business. It's back to the serious stuff, Paddy. It's back to the big boys league, if you will. And we go into the weekend, and well, we're starting potentially behind, aren't we? You know, Rangers have got a wee trip to St Mirren, and then we kick off at 3 to Dundee. As we go in, you know, it goes without saying, Rodgers has reiterated the desire that this is when we come alive. I think he was quite candid, was he not, about the performance against Hearts. It was far from polished. It wasn't great. What sort of response are you looking and expecting for when it gets to Dundee? And is there any particular changes that you would make to the side based on what we've seen? Maeda not being an option, as we know, because he's not going to get dropped in that early, is he?
No. I'd like to see us have 2 good halves for a change. I keep saying it.
That'd be great.
I'd like to see us go out there and batter them. Greg Taylor, we know he'll start. Are we happy about it? Probably not. I'd like to see Palmer start.
Can I jump in? What about Scales? Because Scales has been much maligned. Carter Vickers didn't cover himself in glory, but we talked about Nawrocki. Does Scales get a chance to remind everybody the performances he does do, or is it, yeah, do you know what? It's time to bring in Nawrocki.
Scales is tried and tested, isn't he? Nawrocki, as much as he's done a job, isn't. So for me, as much as we love to hate him, I'd keep him in. Just tell him to stay back and don't run forward, stay in your position and don't let the ball go over your head. Yeah, like I say, I'd have Palmer up there because he's the more natural on the left. Yang clearly doesn't feel comfortable on that wing or on the right, let's be honest. I'd start James Forrest I think he deserves a start. I'd give him the 60 minutes if he's got the 60 minutes in his legs. I would go with Kyogo, as much as I've been crying for Maeda to get a start. I just think that against Dundee, Kyogo's your man. He's going to provide the pace. Obviously, midfield speaks for itself, doesn't it? You know who I'm going to say is in there: McGregor, Hatate, and Matt O'Reilly.
Yep.
And yeah, that's pretty much my thoughts on it. And I'd like to see 2 good halves of football.
I think that's the basics, isn't it? But also, just before I move to Josh to finish us up here, the game at St Mirren. Did you see enough of St Mirren and on their own pitch and all that kind of stuff? And again, knowing that Dundee are breathing down their neck, do you expecting anything there? Or, yeah.
Myself?
No, Paddy, he's just laughing.
Me. I reckon this is, I said it before, this is the time Kwon's going to make a name for himself, isn't it? The big man's going to go out there, he's going to bang in a hat-trick and all this fun.
Right, you're getting
bring him back.
I'll come down, Vibe. I'll jump in the motor before I go to work and check your temperature with that tenner chat.
As much as I'd love to see them do the damage, I'd hope for a draw. I'll go for a draw.
So, just take yourself, we'll give you the final word on this. How do you think this weekend's going to pan out? There's John asking, firstly, as I says, Norotsky, do we get him in there? And there's another wee one for you to ponder. We saw that McGregor doesn't look fully fit. We've seen a Wata in there. What about Bernardo for a start? Where do you think that's going to pan out for our game? And do you think there's any hope in the other game?
I don't think Bernardo's defensive enough for what we're playing. Like Callum, Iwata, they're more defensive, aren't they? They're more sit backish, stand off. They're going to intercept more. Bernardo likes to push forward too much for me. I think that would leave too many gaps. If Callum isn't fit, then we'll get a Wata in there. Just keep
yourself, Josh. You want to bring us home on this weekend's action, my man?
I think Bernardo is very much, I like to think of him as the running man in Celtic's midfield. He does a lot of work that potentially goes unnoticed, and he's really good with the ball at his feet as well. He's got good technical ability compared to a guy like David Turnbull, for example. In terms of Paisley, I don't think there's much hope of a surprise in there for Celtic. Listen, this Rangers side have been quite inconsistent at times this season, and they've brought us a lot of happy shocks. Is there going to be one this weekend? I'm not entirely sure. I'd love to see Kwon do us a favour, but I think the focus should be on Celtic, and because we know if Celtic win their next 3 games, they can win the league, and that starts this weekend at Dundee. So focus on our own business. Doesn't matter what happens earlier in the day. Just go to Dundee and get the 3 points. But I think it's going to be a really tough game. We know that pitch up there is a bit of a bomb scare at times. They pulled off a result against Rangers last Wednesday night. It should not be forgotten. They're a rigid side. They've got a really good midfield of Mo Salah, Luke McCowan and Lyle Cameron. Owen Beck is out for the season. That was confirmed earlier today, so that'll be a bit of a boost. But our keeper had a man of the match performance against Rangers, and Bakayoko, striker, Sierra Leone international, as a threat. So it's going to be a tough one. But Celtic do have the quality in the end to beat this Dundee team. They should beat this Dundee team. In terms of players, I would like to see Forrest get the nod and get the 60 minutes out of him. I don't think that's going to happen. I think Brendan will bring him on for the last 30, and I think he'll start Palma on the left. And I think it'll be Kuhn on the right-hand side. Kyogo will probably get the start through the middle. Scales will continue. It's non-negotiable.
Even given the physicality that you spoke about there.
I think Scales will be a stick on midfield. It's going to be interesting because I said it in the match breakdown show on Saturday night that I don't think McGregor done too well, and he looked a bit not at 100% fitness for me in the game on Saturday. So it'll be interesting to see if he continues on or if Iwata comes into the team. But if not, I would expect McGregor, Hatate, O'Reilly in the midfield, and then Taylor left back, Scales. Whether we like it or not, that's going to be the left-hand side between now and the end of the season, unless someone gets injured or suspended. Carl Vickers and Johnson, then Joe Hart and goals. So it'll be interesting. It should be a good game, but it's one that Celtic should be looking to take 3 points for them.
Absolutely. I'm staying hopeful, as we say, at this nip and tuck end of the season. I will take any result, but I'll do a wee quick whip round before we go home. How we think it's going to pan out. I think, as you say, it's going to be a tough game. It's going to be nitty gritty. But I think I'm going to be optimistic, and I'm going to say 2-0. I'm not going to say that we're going to get the double great 2 halves of football. I think we'll come to the fore in the second half, as we have done most of this season. That's where I'm at with that. Yourself, Paddy, you got a score for me? You would dare to want to throw your prediction?
I'm going to go for 3-1. I
in?
think 1 each, end of the first half, and then we'll come out and batter in the second half. 3-1.
Any advance on 3-1 or 2-0, Josh? You just taking anyone?
I was going to say 3-1 as well, actually, but at this stage of the season, you take any victory whatsoever. As the banner said a couple of weeks ago, by any means necessary. So there we go.
That is that. There we go. Anyway, it's been absolute
3-1. Get your money on it.
3-1. No injuries. That's it. That's Paddy's bet of the week. You will see how that one pans out. But once again, we've just went over an hour. It's been an absolute pleasure, guys. I've enjoyed talking about it. As we say, it's not been the most exciting of weeks off the back of those semi-finals, but we've managed to look forward to and get our teeth into a few things, and we'll continue to do that. There'll obviously be a wee pre-match show coming up, and we'll also be breaking it down after the game at the weekend. It's a pleasure to have you guys here. Anybody that's been watching, there's been over 60 watching us live. I do appreciate, as always, as we say, thank you there for all the interaction with the channel over the past week or so. It has been really positive, and it's really been appreciated by ourselves. Again, just before we go, if you want to help share the word, make sure before you leave that you give the video a thumbs up, hit the subscribe, and if you like it, share it out there, and connect with us on our socials at CWOpod1888 and on X and on our Facebook, if you like that kind of nonsense, at Celtic World Order Podcast. It's been a pleasure again. Whatever you are doing, take care of yourselves. We've got a game to look forward to the weekend. We'll have another press conference to hear for the manager tomorrow. Hopefully there's some positives coming out of that. So until the next time, take care of yourselves, and hail, hail. See you all later. Good night.
Boys.
Cheers.